is Unit 1, Lesson 4 Lab, Measured Steps. During this lab, we will be measuring and recording different types of measurements. On our list of materials, they have string, scissors, meter stick, ruler, and various household objects. So like a table, a chair, a book, and a pencil. Now I have some string, some extra string from when I put up a new clothesline. So there's my string I'm going to use. Here is my ruler. They want you to use a ruler with millimeter markings. So I do have one that has millimeter markings. Also, a pair of scissors for cutting the string. I have my lab that shows me my steps. The book I'm going to use is just my physical science teacher guide book. Now, I was unable to find a meter stick at the store, so what I'm going to use instead is I have a tape measure, and then I also have conversions for um, using my ruler. And can't see that, can you? Look, it's really light. On this little piece of paper, I have conversions. See if you can get that. So 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters, and then I also have one that turns inches into centimeters. It is 2.54 centimeters per inch. Can't see that very well with my light in my dining room, but those are my conversions because I do not have a meter stick. So I have those, and then my last piece of material is, and this isn't on your list, but you should always have this, is your science notebook. So in here, I will keep any observations or anything that I find out that I don't put on my lab. Okay, well, let's get started. Step 1 in our procedures is to stretch a piece of string so that it runs from the base of your palm to the tip of your longest finger. So they want you to hold it there and try to stretch my hand out. And right about there, I'm going to cut my string. We're going to use this length of string as one of our measuring devices. So there's that. What I'm going to do now is go through and do number 3. So I'm going to I'll measure my dining room since that is where I am. I have a chair next to me. I am working on a table, so I will measure that table. I brought my physical science book to measure. And then I'm also going to use this pencil. Okay, so I just got done recording my data, and I wanted to share a few things with you that I encountered throughout the lab. So number 4 asks us to measure the width of each of those objects using just our hand. So not the string that we measured with yet, but first to just do it using our hand. And I used, what they said from the tip of my tallest finger or longest finger to the base of my thumb. And then record that data on the next page in our data table. So that's what I did. The first thing that I measured was my dining room. and my dining room, I maybe should have picked something that was not so wide. It was a little difficult to do with just my hand. So I did it 3 different times and came up with 3 different numbers. So my first time I did it was 24, the next time was 24.3, and then the third time was 24.5. The difficulty in using your hand to measure something is what makes it a 0.3 or what makes it a 0.5, and that's kind of your choice. So I said it was a 0.3 because it just seemed to fit, to the point, the 30 on my hand. The 0.5, it seemed like it was more towards, more towards the middle. So it was, I found to be very difficult to measure using my hand. So I continued on down the list and measured each one of those objects with my hand. So next I did my table, and I noted here on objects that I did the length of my table. I didn't do the width, I didn't do the height, I just did the length of the tabletop. That one was quite a bit easier to do. The chair, I did how tall it was. That one was easier as well, just not as big. The book was super easy. It was about 2 hand lengths long. It was a little shorter than 2, but it was closer to 2 than any other number I could think of. It was very difficult to measure with my hand. And then the last thing was the pencil. And the pencil was longer than one of my hands, but I went with one because it just seemed easier. I couldn't come up with another measurement that would have been closer. The next thing I did was grab that piece of string that I used, or that I cut in the beginning. And I used that piece of string to measure all 5 of those objects. And I ran into the same issue. One thing that I want to know is, the string is a bit stretchy. So I'm wondering if when I cut it, I had it stretched. And then when I lay it flat, it gives me a different measurement. So not very reliable. My meter stick, of course, I did not use a meter stick because I'm so I did end up using my tape measure, and then I just did conversions on a piece of paper for inches to years. So you can make a conversion calculator on or online in order to go from inches to meters. It's really easy. You can go right online and they'll do it for you. So that's how I found the numbers for my meter stick. And so those numbers to me seem like they are a lot more reliable than either of these two. I don't know. I have like zero confidence in either sense of these numbers. But I was using a tape measure for these, so you can see they're pretty consistent and they didn't change really at all. Some things it was easier to get a very close read on. Of course, the book was very easy to measure the book. The room, swayed slightly as far as measuring. And then the last thing that I used to measure was my ruler. And it wasn't as easy as my tape measure. So of course it would have been a little more difficult to get these measurements had I used a meter stick instead of a tape measure. I did not use a meter stick, I used a tape measure. That's something that I will note I did make a note of in my science journal. So I need to make sure that I have that on here as well. The ruler was easy to use as well. It has all these lines on it. It's defined measurements. There was no guessing, so it was a lot easier to use a ruler. And the numbers came out a little different. I think that is because this ruler isn't bendy. When I measure something with a tape measure, I can bend it and I can see exactly where that end is. I had to guess a little with my ruler. So those numbers have turned out, just a tad different. Not much at all, but just a little bit. Moving on down to the analysis portion of the lab. Number 1, which measuring device was the most challenging to use to obtain a measurement that would help someone else know the size of the objects you measured? Explain your answer, including as many reasons as you can think of. So refer to your science journal as you are answering these questions because it will help you to use definitive reasons why. They also want to know which measuring device was the most effective for measuring very large objects, such as the room, and why. So, depending on which objects you are measuring, using a ruler, the millimeter side, measure a pencil, I mean, that's a good measuring device. We can hold it right there, and we can see exactly how long this pencil is. Of course, using a tape measure is also easy. I find not as easy, because it doesn't stay stationary, but your meter stick would if you were using a meter stick. Using this to measure an entire dining room, not much fun. Using this to measure a dining room, even less fun, and this is probably the least amount of fun. So there are measuring devices that are better for different objects, and then just state why that is for both small ones and big, or little objects and big objects. Number 4, if other students completed the same experiment using the same objects you did, but using their own hand, how would the measurements compare with yours? So, for example, if you had, a mom or an older brother or a dad helping you to get those different measurements, of course, their measurements are going to be a lot different from yours. So state why that would be. And then do you think that if a family member used the tape measure or meter stick and a ruler to measure those items, do you think that they would get the same measurements as you did? Or did they get the same measurements as you did? I hope you enjoyed this lab. And always remember with labs, you can make those little alterations if you need to. I tried to find a meter stick. I could not find one, and I did not want that to be the reason that I did not complete the lab. So whenever you make changes to the materials, make sure that's not the kind of change that would necessarily change your data completely or change the results of the experiment completely, but make do with what you have. Don't skip a lab just because it's something that you don't have on hand. And if you're ever wondering, if there's something on your list of materials and you're wondering if something can be substituted, just send your science teacher a email and ask them, see what they say, or you can look it up on the internet and find out for yourself as well.